Welcome to another deep dive. Today we're going to be looking at one of the most, you could say, captivating passages from the Bible, Mark chapter 5, verses 1 through 43. It's a whirlwind of events, healings, faith, encounters. This is the kind of stuff that leaves you at the end just thinking, what just happened?
Yeah.
And so today we're going to try to unpack not just what happens, but the deeper messages woven into this story. We're going to really take it apart and see what we can learn from it. So picture this. Jesus has just crossed the Sea of Galilee and arrives in an area called the country of the Gadarenes.
And that detail right there is actually crucial. It's more than just a change of scenery. This is a shift into Gentile territory, which means Jesus, a Jewish rabbi, is stepping outside of his usual sphere of influence.
Oh, wow. You're right.
This is going to potentially raise eyebrows,
Yeah.
challenge social norms.
I hadn't even thought about that. That adds a whole new layer of complexity to this, right?
Absolutely.
He's really going outside of his comfort zone, you could say. And right away, he's met with a situation that's intense, to say the least. A man possessed by not just one, but a legion of demons living among the tombs. Okay, I'm already getting chills just thinking about this.
Oh, yeah. The imagery is very deliberate. Tombs back in that era weren't just places of burial.
Right.
They were considered ritually unclean, and they evoked a deep sense of fear and dread. So this man, just by his location, is already an outcast, both physically and spiritually isolated.
And the text goes on to describe his torment in vivid detail. I mean, he's breaking chains. He's crying out day and night. He's even hurting himself. This isn't just a mental or spiritual struggle. This is full-blown suffering.
Right. And it's that self-harm, him cutting himself with stones, that adds this visceral layer to the story, really underscores the utter despair and the demon's grip on him.
But here's what blows my mind. Even in this state, he recognizes Jesus' authority.
Yes.
Even worships him.
Yeah, it's like this spark of hope.
It's like a flicker of light in this total darkness.
A flicker of light in this total darkness. Exactly. And notice how the demon identifies itself as legion, which is way more than just a scary name. In Roman military terms, a legion was thousands of soldiers. So this isn't just a possession, this is an overwhelming force of evil that's controlling this man.
Wow. Okay, so we have this picture of utter chaos and suffering, and then things take this wild turn. I have to admit, I'm a little confused by this. The demons beg Jesus to send them into a herd of pigs? Pigs, of all things. Why?
Well, the symbolism here is key. Pigs were considered unclean in Jewish culture. They represented everything that was impure, unholy.
Okay.
So by sending these demons into the pigs, there's this idea of a transfer of evil, almost like a scapegoating.
It's like they're saying, take this unclean spirit and put it into these unclean animals.
Exactly. And of course, what happens? The pigs immediately stampede into the sea and drown. This is such a dramatic act. It showcases the destructive power of those demonic forces, but it also highlights Jesus's authority over them. He commands and they obey, even if it leads to destruction.
Yeah. You would think that people would be amazed by this, right?
Yeah.
But instead, they're terrified. They actually beg Jesus to leave.
Yeah.
It just seems so counterintuitive.
Yeah, it might seem strange at first, but consider this. They've just witnessed something completely beyond their comprehension. This is otherworldly.
Right.
And their fear probably comes from the unknown. This is a realization that they're dealing with forces totally beyond their control, and it's like they'd rather stick with the familiar, even if it includes this demonic presence, than face something new and potentially even more unsettling.
That's a powerful insight.
Yep.
It makes you think about, how often do we do the same thing in our own lives?
Yeah.
Do we choose the comfort of the known over the potential of the unknown? Even if that unknown could be good. So contrasting all this fear is the healed man. He now wants to follow Jesus, right?
Oh, yeah.
But Jesus tells him, go home and tell everyone what the Lord has done for you. So it's not just about sending him away, but giving him a mission.
Exactly. It's about the power of personal testimony, this ripple effect of sharing your story.
It's really amazing. So the man who was once an outcast becomes a crucial part of spreading the message. Talk about a turnaround. But the story doesn't end there. Mark weaves in another encounter, and this time it's with Jairus, a synagogue ruler. This man's desperate. His daughter's dying.
Oh, wow.
And he comes to Jesus seeking help.
So we've got spiritual healing on the one hand and now physical healing on the other.
Yeah.
But notice how the underlying current of faith in the face of impossible odds, that remains constant. Yeah, and I mean, this plea from Jairus, it throws us right into the human drama of it all.
Yeah.
Here's this man of status, a leader in the synagogue,
Right.
yet he's utterly powerless against his daughter's illness.
Wow.
It shows us that suffering, it doesn't discriminate.
No. It doesn't.
Hmm.
It's a good reminder that even those who seem to have it all together face moments of absolute vulnerability. And as if this wasn't intense enough already, another layer gets added to the story. So as Jesus is on his way to Jairus' house, a woman with a 12-year bleeding disorder pushes through the crowd just to touch his garment. She's convinced that this will heal her.
Whoa, hold on, hold on. We need to unpack this because this is huge.
Okay.
This woman's condition, according to Jewish law, made her ritually unclean.
Right.
So imagine the social isolation. She's excluded from religious life, probably shunned by many. Her existence has been one of suffering and separation for 12 long years.
It breaks my heart just to think about that. But what I find so incredibly inspiring is her unwavering faith.
Yeah.
She's not just hoping, she's determined.
Mm.
She believes with every fiber of her being that even just a touch of Jesus can heal her.
And that's the key takeaway here. Jesus, in this crowded, chaotic scene, he stops and acknowledges her. He doesn't dismiss her as an outcast. He actually says, "Your faith has healed you." Think about that statement. Especially in that context, this is a radical affirmation of her worth and her belief.
It gives me chills. But it's such a beautiful example of how Jesus sees people, how he honors their faith even when they're marginalized or overlooked by society. But just as this incredible moment of healing occurs, we get some devastating news. Jairus' daughter has died. I can't even imagine the weight of that news crushing down on him.
And here, the narrative tension, it ratchets up a notch.
Yeah.
We've gone from a glimmer of hope for Jairus to what seems like utter despair.
It's like a complete reversal.
Total reversal. But Jesus, in this moment of crisis, says something that resonates through the ages. He says, "Do not be afraid, only believe."
Wow, those 4 words, "do not be afraid," they feel like a lifeline thrown to Jairus and to anyone who's ever faced impossible odds.
Right.
It's like Jesus is saying, even in the face of death, don't let fear cripple you. Hold on to your belief.
Exactly. And it's a powerful message that goes beyond just this immediate situation.
Right.
It speaks to the human condition, our tendency to let fear cloud our judgment and paralyze us.
Yeah.
Jesus is calling for something radical,
Mhm.
choosing faith over fear, even when the circumstances seem completely hopeless.
And so they arrive at Jairus' house. And it's exactly as you would expect. Chaos, mourning, people weeping. But Jesus, completely undeterred, enters the room where the girl's lying and does the unthinkable. He raises her from the dead.
I mean, this is the climax of the story.
Yeah.
This miracle is the ultimate display of Jesus's power and authority over life and death. It's a moment that just defies logic, it shatters all expectations, and it just underscores that central theme. Faith can triumph even in the face of what seems like the ultimate defeat.
And the way Mark describes it, it's not just this show of force.
No.
Jesus takes the girl's hand, speaks directly to her.
It's personal.
There's this tenderness, this personal touch that makes it even more powerful.
Absolutely. It reinforces that Jesus's miracles aren't just about these cosmic displays of power, they're acts of profound love and compassion.
Yeah.
He meets people in their vulnerability and their suffering and offers them not just healing, but genuine connection.
Wow. So we've got these 2 seemingly separate stories, yet they're intricately woven together, exploring themes of fear and faith, despair and hope, isolation and connection. It's a lot to absorb.
It is, and I think it's worth pausing here to just let it all sink in.
Yeah.
We've covered a lot of ground, but there's still more to uncover. We'll be back in a moment to explore how these stories resonate with our own lives and leave you with some final thoughts to ponder.
Welcome back to our deep dive into Mark 5.
Mm.
We've witnessed some pretty extraordinary events, demonic possession, miraculous healings, even a resurrection. It's a lot to wrap our heads around. But I think the real power of this passage lies in how it connects to our own lives, even thousands of years later.
Absolutely. I mean, these aren't just ancient tales. They're invitations to reflect on our own experiences of suffering and hope and belief. They remind us that the human condition, the struggles that we face, the longings we hold in our hearts, they haven't really changed all that much over time.
So how do we bridge that gap? I mean, how do we take these stories and make them relevant to our modern everyday lives?
Well, for one thing, they remind us that we're not alone in our struggles. I mean, the people in these stories face real challenges: physical pain, social isolation, grief, fear. These are all universal human experiences that transcend time and culture. We might not be battling literal demons, but we all have our inner demons.
That's true.
Our own anxieties, our moments of despair.
Right. It's about recognizing that shared human experience, that thread that connects us to people across centuries. But what about the miracles? I mean, I haven't seen anyone raise anyone from the dead lately, So does that mean these stories are just, I don't know, feel-good tales with no real application to our lives?
Not at all. The miracles are powerful symbols, but the real message lies in those underlying themes. Think about the woman with the bleeding disorder, for example. Her healing wasn't just about stopping the physical ailment, right? It
Right.
was about restoring her to wholeness, to community, to a sense of worthiness. And that kind of healing can happen in countless ways in our lives.
So it's about recognizing those moments of healing, those breakthroughs,
Mm.
even if they're not, as dramatic as parting the Red Sea or walking on water.
Precisely. It could be finding the courage to forgive someone who's hurt you, or overcoming a fear that's been holding you back, or simply experiencing a moment of peace in the midst of chaos. Those are all forms of healing, of restoration, and they're just as powerful as any physical miracle.
Yeah, I like that. It shifts the focus from the extraordinary to the everyday, those small but significant victories that make up our lives. And it makes me think about the emphasis on faith in these stories. It's not just about believing in a higher power, but it's about believing in something bigger than ourselves, something that can give us strength and hope even in the darkest times.
Beautifully put. And that something bigger. It doesn't have to be religious in nature. It could be faith in humanity or in the power of love or the resilience of the human spirit. It's about choosing to believe that even when things seem bleak, there's still good in the world. There's still hope for a brighter future.
And speaking of hope, I keep coming back to that line from Jesus, "Do not be afraid, only believe." It's such a simple statement, yet it holds so much power.
It does. It's a call to action, an invitation to confront our fears and choose faith instead. To trust that even when we can't see the way forward, there's a light guiding us, a force supporting us, a love surrounding us.
That's a beautiful thought to end on. As we wrap up our deep dive into Mark Flug, I hope you'll take some time to reflect on these stories and how they resonate with your own life. What are the moments of suffering and healing that have shaped you? Where have you experienced the power of faith, compassion, and love? And how might your story, your journey, offer hope and encouragement to others who are facing their own challenges?
Remember, even in the midst of chaos and uncertainty, there's always a possibility for transformation, for growth, for healing. And sometimes all it takes is a spark of faith, a flicker of hope, and a willingness to believe in something beyond ourselves.